All right. So we had three breakout questions on the table. First of which, who was Carter G. Woodson? Second, who is Marcus Garvey? And finally, what was your contemporary analysis? Who would like to speak to Carter G. Woodson? Go ahead, Gianna.
I apologize. I'm sharing a room with a teacher currently, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to like hear background sound.
It's okay.
Anyway, from my collection of information, he is the father of Black history and basically established. I'm not sure how to if I'm allowed to say the word or not, so I'm just gonna.
Bro, yeah, I got you.
Yes.
I appreciate your caution. Yeah.
Yes. The History Week, and then that later turned into Black History Month in February. He was notable for graduating from Harvard with a Ph.D., and he wrote a book called The Misinformation of
Negro.
that word, and how he was feeling that Black people were dependent on people that were in like higher groups, such as like the white man, and how the education system was not educating Black people on how to separate themselves from the white man to grow and to prosper. So his book was established to bring African American voices and experiences up and to bring like an uplifting presence in the Black community.
Well, damn, Johnny, you want to teach the lecture? I mean, shit, you covered it. You covered it all. Absolutely. Thank you. Who was Marcus Garvey? So, Garvey, nobody?
Um, Hi, it's Lathan. I haven't been here. I joined late. But from what I remember about Garvey, I went to the Pan African Studies extra credit one. And from what I remember, he was a Black man who wanted to educate Black people based off of the media. And from what I recall, he would educate them through like the beers at the time was one of the examples.
What was it again? The beers?
Yeah, from I believe that the guy talked about someone was talking about the design for a beer at a point, and they're like, well, Black people drink beer, so why not have them drink beer and what's it called, and learn something about like the Africans. So then they would put little Snapple things on the beer bottle.
Okay.
Wasn't Marcus Garvey? He uh he was an educator of Black studies, but he also wanted Black Americans to understand where they came from. And didn't he want Black Americans to go back to Africa? Like he was trying to, he was, fuck, sorry, excuse my French. He was trying to convince, there we go, there's a word. He was trying to convince the group of African Americans, like, hey, this isn't our land. Our land is Africa. We need to get back there.
Yeah, that's more accurate about who Garvey is. I don't know. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I thought he only wanted us to go back to Africa if like we couldn't be treated equal by everybody else. Like if he did he not say like if Black people were not treated equal by everybody else, we should just go back to Africa? Is that not what he was? Is that not like what he was saying?
No, from what I've learned, he was more of like we need to go back in general because this isn't where we belong. He wanted Africans Americans to go back to the motherland, to embrace their African heritage and to be proud to be Black because during this time in America, we were living Black people were afraid to be black. They were ashamed to be black. We were burning our hair, straightening our hair, perming our hair, trying to fit the white man's agenda. So his goal was to bring us back to our originality. I mean, to our birthright, if you will.
Does that make sense, Julie? And I don't think that you're wrong, because I would pose you this question. Are African people treated right currently?
No.
Right? So, I mean, the cause would be true, and I think you're both correct. Um, what was discussed in your contemporary analysis, or sorry, in your breakout groups regarding your contemporary analysis?
Who, us, or everyone?
Anyone?
Well, that's four us. I think there could be a relation between like now and then, this idea of being misinformed and miseducated, um, especially like in our roots, or really in most studies. I think it's very easy to pick up your phone and start scrolling on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and you know learn something. I say in quotations because um, while you feel like you're learning, you're not learning something that may be like factual. And I think in the readings they talk about this idea of like sketchy, and that's very true now. I think a lot of the information that we pull from Twitter or TikTok, it's sketchy. It's sketchy because I mean it's coming from sources of people who think they did their research but did very surface level, and maybe didn't even go back to what you try to preach to us, this idea of like reading. They probably didn't read like real literature, real books. They saw some WikiHow or wiki like something. I heard that Wikipedia is a good place to start, but I don't think it's like a place to be preaching information onto others. And so that's kind of the relation, this idea that we're still being misinformed today. And I think the quote was, and I have like Joseph to thank for this because I kind of forgot it. It was this idea that we have to like know, in order to succeed in the future, we need to know our past.
Roberto, the idea of misinformation, especially in our now, is a really, really good point. Because you're right. We are probably, they say we're in the information age, but I would argue it's the misinformation age. And a lot of that is due to the algorithm, right? The algorithm creates what's called an echo chamber. So you don't hear anything but what they think that you're interested in. So you're very informed in one way of thinking, and you don't even get to hear an opposite or polarizing side of things, But you're absolutely right. All right. So I mean, truth be told, like as it pertains to Carter G. Woodson, Gianna did really cover a large scope of who he was and what he's done. But I'm interested, and I find it very profound, his assessment in the opening page, in the sense of like this notion of leadership and spokespeople for African folks. He says, Negroes here and there in America have been hailed as leaders. The press has given them great praise, and their friends have sung their virtues in high tones. But a thorough analysis of these famous Negro leaders will disclose the fact that they owed their prominence mainly to white men who considered such spokesmen as those persons through whom they could work to keep the Negro in his place. That's a very, very profound way of looking at the role of leadership within the Black community. So if we are to think about like our current world, like our contemporary sense, who are some of the Black leaders, if you would?
Malcolm X.
No,
Wait, are we talking about
current
Black
world.
leaders in general?
Yeah,
Or-
right now, like right now, in our current, like right now.
Oh, in
Current.
our current, Barack Obama. Um,
Well,
we have I can't. We have the leader of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay, Alicia
Kamala,
Garvey.
Kamala Harris,
Kamala Harris. Okay.
Michelle Obama.
So you got the Obamas and the Vice President Harris. Anyone else?
I oh,
I would say Dr. Umar.
Umar. Okay.
I would say Tyler the Creator.
Tyler the Creator. Okay.
Tyler
I
the Creator.
Yeah, I think I'm really strong on like the idea that well it's here, but media, right? And I think that Black people being represented as something other than gang members or whatever, I think that that means a lot, especially because in media we always see us acting up, doing something crazy, and so I think he's a Black influence because he's a positive Black person that everyone sees.
Oh, Ava DuVernay then. Ava DuVernay, she's a Black director. I
Mhm.
didn't really want to add any celebrities because I'm like, I was thinking, I'm like, I don't know if I can find any good celebrities to set a good example. Oh, Viola Davis, Angela Bassett. Um, those I guess. I mean,
Gianna,
they're not leaders, but actors, right?
you had your hand up, Gianna?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like Black musicians and how like their voice uplifts other people's Black voices, and also they advocate for their Black communities and also go back and help their communities, which I think is awesome.
Okay. Um, so real quick, one more time. Negroes here and there in America have been hailed as leaders. The press has given them great praise, and their friends have sung their virtues in high tones. But a thorough analysis of these famous Negro leaders will disclose the fact that they owe their prominence mainly to white men, who consider such spokesmen as these persons through whom they could work to keep the Negro in his place. Barack Obama. They whom they could work to keep the Negro in his place. Did Barack Obama do anything, practically speaking, materially speaking, to improve the conditions of Black folks? I would
No.
argue that they stayed in their place. Kamala
Why
Harris. Go ahead.
why do you believe that Barack Obama stayed in their place? That the Obama stayed in their place?
No, we Black folks stayed in our place.
Oh,
Our conditions did not get better under the Obama administration. Did they?
I was too young to know or to understand what was going on under the.
I wasn't. They didn't.
What did he do? I'm
From
sorry.
what I understand, the presidency, the reason why we got fucked over by Obama is because Black people thought that he was going to be a president for Black people, that he was a president for the Democratic Party, which was at the time, from what I understand, could be misinformation, but the LGBTQ plus community, which was who he was mainly catering to. Correct me if I'm
Where you
wrong.
get your information, Lathan? I don't understand how the Democratic Party and LGBTQ are synonymous.
How are they not?
But
Wait, hold on. But isn't our government run by checks and balances? So it's not just the president that's making laws. That's passing new laws. It's the Congress. It's the House of Representatives.
so look,
So I mean,
time out. Y'all moving the needle on the conversation.
okay,
Lathan talking about he's not president for Black folks. Who the fuck got him in office?
Black people, the voters, the
Us.
people.
Furthermore, the question at hand is the notion of leadership for Black people, not America. I don't give a fuck what America got going on. America has never cared about Black people anyway. So that's not my concern, nor is it the question at hand as it pertains to the claim that Woodson is making. In fact, Barack Obama is a great example of Woodson's point.
How?
Because
Okay.
well, so another question. Sorry. How are me and Michelle and me and you also all on different points? Because I'm saying that he wasn't a president for Black people,
Right.
and you're also saying that, but differently.
No, what I'm saying is let's not move the needle of the conversation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Let's keep the conversation where it's at in the sense of the focus being Black people, not Democrats, not America, none of that. That's not the focus, nor is it what Woodson's talking about. So I'm not saying that we're disagreeing. What I'm saying is the conversation has gone from here to here, right? So let's keep it back to the point at hand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I got you. Thank you.
So my point is these people who have been placed in positions to we view them as leaders do nothing to move Black folks forward is the point that Woodson's making. And I would argue what he's also saying is who are placing these people in the role of leadership. One way to think about that, who is financing these people's position as leadership? Because who is financing it is going to determine how in the capacity that they could be a leader. Y'all with me on that? Does that make sense? This is the critique that Woodson's making. Be careful of such, right? And as you work deeper into the chapter, you'll see what he means. It says on the bottom of page 101, Woodson was also, among other things, a contemporary of Marcus Garvey. The Journal of Negro History, founded by Woodson, first appeared in 1916. The year of Garvey's arrival in the United States, the celebration of Black History Week, pioneered by Woodson, was begun in 1926, the year before Garvey's deportation to Jamaica. And just as Woodson, the historian, also indulged in political activity, so too Garvey, the leader of the largest Black movement in Afro-America, was also keenly interested in Black history. It stands to reason that the paths of these two great giants of the 1920s should have crossed. Garvey's publications commented regularly on Woodson and his work. The two men had mutual friends and acquaintances. Woodson's political activity brought him perilously close to being drawn into the Marcus Garvey Must Go campaign aimed at Garvey's imprisonment and deportation. And Woodson eventually became a regular columnist for Garvey's weekly Negro World. So one thing to keep in mind, right, what they're arguing here is that Woodson and Garvey were contemporaries. They operated and they worked in the same temporal time frame, the same time, right, the 1920s. And their work and their interests were very similar. They both had publications, right? Which is, to Lathan's point, the main media of the time, right? It wasn't about TV. It wasn't about like, yo, you picked up this journal and this is how you received your information, right? But what's also being pointed out here is that there was a movement to try to get Garvey out of the country, to get Garvey deported, right? And it's arguing that the work of Woodson, no, not the work of Woodson, Woodson himself was closely being drawn into, because of who he knew, to the people who are having conversations around getting Marcus Garvey deported. Now, one thing about Garvey, as Michelle pointed out, he was very uncompromising. He was very unabashed. He was very proud of Blackness, and he strove to make sure that Black people had the same amount of pride in their Blackness. Also for Garvey, it was the question of land. All that other shit, it don't matter. It's about land, right? Any people to be respected seriously has their own land or nation, has their own flag, and they have their own army. These are some of the points that Garvey made. So with that being said, we have our land as African people, Africa. And his famous cause was Africa for the Africans at home, in Africa, and abroad, those outside of Africa, right? So that's our land. We need a flag. So he comes up with the red, black, and green flag. Red for the blood that was drawn, right? Black for the people themselves, and green for the land, green for the resources. Garvey came up with the Black Star Line, which transported goods and resources back and forth across the Atlantic. For the Africans who sought to go back to Africa, the Black Star Line would transport them back to Africa. Now, Garvey did all of this without the help of white beneficial aid, without the help of white benevolence, without the help of white philanthropy, excuse me. Garvey did this on his own. Garvey raised the money through the community. So he was wary of taking the money from the outside because he believed if you take the money from the outside, they're going to control and dictate how you make your move. Okay, so looking at the bottom of page 102, we have a point of this, right? The last paragraph going into 103. A spat of such commentary took place in 1922 when Woodson accepted a grant of $50,000 from the Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundation. Robert Lincoln Poston, sometimes a UNIA secretary, he implored Woodson, though, to be careful for nothing could have more harmful effects on the Negro than a Negro history dictated by white capitalists. William Ferris expressed the same concerns, and a Negro World editor commended Woodson on the gift while harboring the same sentiments. The reservations expressed over these gifts were rooted in the doctrine of Black self-reliance, one of the ideological rocks upon which the UNIA was built. It was consistent with this position when, in 1927, the Negro World columnist S.A. Haynes rushed to the support of Woodson in support of his efforts to independently raise $20,000. So what they're saying here, right? Carter Woodson got a $50,000 grant from the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, right? These names should sound familiar to you if you're somewhat familiar with American history, right? And the Secretary General of the UNIA, Marcus Garvey's organization, like warned Woodson, like, yo, hold on, congratulations, first of all, on getting that money, but yo, be careful. Because when they give you that money, they're going to try to dictate the terms of your work. Henceforth, right? Nothing could be more harmful than a Negro history controlled by capitalists. So to not only back up their talk about being self-sufficient, right? Because the article argues the reason that they had this thinking, the reason that they had this approach was because they learned that from Garvey, right? They learned this from being a member of the Garvey movement, who was all about self-reliance. And so much so that they've decided to back up these claims for when Woodson tried to raise some money on his own, they were willing to support his cause, right? So not only are we telling you or theorizing on what you should do when the opportunity arises, we're there to support you. So this is how staunch this notion of self-reliance was ingrained into the psyche of those who follow the UNIA, in the words of Marcus Garvey. And these type of practices, right, is provided cause for them to try to get rid of Garvey. Just think about it. If you have the largest mass movement in the United States by African people, the largest mass movement in the United States for African people, and it's solely funded by African people. No one can control or dictate the terms of this movement. They're establishing connections back and forth to Africa. They're establishing goods and services and trades back and forth to Africa. They banned the paper, the Negro World, right? But they're still able to transport this information like the Negro World because they have their own steam line. So, of course, this has to be stopped. Anybody familiar with COINTELPRO? Sound familiar to anyone? COINTELPRO. CIA counterintelligence program. Look it up. COINTELPRO. All Black major mass movements from Garvey to the Black Panthers were destroyed by COINTELPRO at the hands of J. Edgar Hoover. I would argue J. Edgar Hoover is probably one of the most diabolical motherfuckers that walked this planet. From Garvey to the Black Panthers, J. Edgar Hoover destroyed all of these individuals. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all of these individuals suffered at the hands of J. Edgar Hoover and the COINTELPRO program. He would do things like send spies into these organizations, right? So someone who works for the CIA would join and be a member of the UNIA, and they would work their way up to high-ranking officials in these organizations. In fact, one of Garvey's main lieutenants was a CIA informant. Go ahead, Michelle.
I don't think we could hear you, Michelle.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Got you now. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. I was saying, didn't they do the same thing to Billie Holiday, where if she tried to sing Strange Fruit, they had FBI agents there at her performance, so if she did sing it, they'd arrest her ass.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different. The CIA and the FBI is different. So to certain degrees, right? Their purposes were the same, but their tactics were a lot different. What the CIA would do is, like, for example, Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party, right? They had one of his main security guards was a CIA informant, and he provided them the layout to the apartment. So on December 4th, when Fred Hampton was murdered, the CIA knew exactly how to go and where to go in the apartment to make the strike, right? For example, on the campus of UCLA, they used to have what's called Bunchy Hall. Bunchy Carter was a Black Panther member who was killed on the campus of UCLA by the US organization. What happened and how the CIA comes into play, the CIA would do things like send letters to the Black Panther Party saying it's from the US organization, talking about how they would murder them. And in return, they would send letters from the Black Panther Party to the US organization saying that they would murder them, right? So these are little shifts at hand that the CIA would do to stoke up tensions and rivalries to make sure that Black folks kill each other, right? The files and the surveillance that they have on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X came out at the hands of the CIA, right? So these are just, again, examples from the Garvey movement all the way through the Black Panther Party, how one program and one agency was central in destroying these movements. And so when they talk about Woodson getting pulled into this Garvey Must Go campaign, these are some of the things that they're talking about, right? These are some of the tactics that the CIA employed, and largely what they would do, if you're paying close attention, is they would pin one Black organization against another Black organization and let them take each other out. Still goes at hand today. How do you think the police deal with gang truces? Think about it. Does it make sense for a police gang task force to want to have an end to gang wars? There would be no use for them. So it's documented in 1996, for example, just 1 year and one example, how when they were able to come together with the great truce between the Crips and the Bloods, the police would do things like steal a car from a Crip neighborhood, drive into a Blood neighborhood, and do a drive-by to end the truce, right? So these are the same CIA tactics employed to keep this notion of Black on Black crime persisting.
Is there a specific name for that event that you're talking about? Because I had no.
You could go to there's a documentary called Bastards of the Party. It lays that out quite clearly. There's also a book by the name of a guy named Gary Webb, and he talks about I think it's called Dark Alliances is the name of the book by Gary Webb, and it talks about how the police and the government would smuggle guns and drugs into South LA and use those drugs and guns to uptake the gang warfare and undermine undermine gang truces by doing these type of tactics. So those are two good sources to get that information. Bastard of the Party is a documentary, and then Dark Alliances by Gary Webb is a book.
Niggas want you.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, no, my fault.
All right. So what we'll do here, I'll put my lecture on pause and we'll transition into our fishbowl. You could talk about what you heard in the lecture. You could read from your journal, or you could talk about what was discussed in the breakout groups. You have to go twice per semester. You have one time to pass. Does anyone want to volunteer? Okay, we have Amelia. Thank you. Anyone
Wait, you
else?
said how many times? You said how many
Twice
times
per,
we have to go?
twice
Oh,
per semester. Mhm. Anyone else? All right, Filberto, I think this is your second time, correct, Filberto?
Yeah.
So you're done for the semester. We'll get one more, and if not, I'll just call that random.
can I go next week for the
Uh,
fishbowl?
next week, just raise your hand, and then we'll get you down, okay?
Okay.
We got you, Valerie. So it'll be Amelia, Filberto, and Valerie. We'll go in that order. Amelia, start us off. Um, I would prefer it be talked about, Amelia. Is it possible that we circle back to you? Is your mic like out for good, or is it like working sometimes? Because I would rather have it a discussion. But if it's not working,
Hear well.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I had it written down. It was looping back to the example of Obama, but it was more a question like how it correlates to the text.
Okay.
It was in what ways or what certain projects could he have done during his presidency that would have acted in opposition to the way that Woodson said many African American famous persons often act in favor of the white person. Because as Shai said, I was like way too young to understand, but I did understand that the Obama Care Act was something that was like very, very important in my home. So I'm not too sure about like what he could have done otherwise.
Okay. I'll get through the fishbowl and then I'll come back to that. Okay. Filberto.
I just wanted to touch base on that. What you spoke on your lecture. These like organizations or like funded by the white man. Um, it's crazy because they know that like together, like when a minoritized group is like together, like they know that they're stronger, and so therefore they create these divisions and like really go out of their way to divide and like find ways so that they don't look like the bad guy, and instead they I don't know, it's fucked up. That's really fucked up. I didn't know they would like, for example, you mentioned the gang thing. I was like, damn, because you make so much progress, and I think once they see progress, they find a way to bring that to a halt. Because yeah, together you're stronger, and they realize that.
Yeah, good call out. Thank you, Filberto. Valerie.
Hi, yeah, I'm in a doctor's office, so I'm trying to be as quiet as possible.
Okay.
But what I thought was interesting is that this reading kind of connects to, I'm forgetting the name, but we talked about it maybe 2 classes ago, where it was talking about how the government, not just the government, but just the world, white people as a whole, continually try to divide people of color in order to maintain their power. And I thought it was interesting how that has come into play at least like 4 times at this semester, how the more divided we become, I think it's important to like step back and think, okay, but why? Why are we fighting each other? Because in the like the big picture is that the reason that society as a whole, doesn't matter if you're Black, Mexican, whatever, the reason we argue is to keep people who are in power in power.
Yep.
And I just think that's important.
And I think what you're pointing out is the destruction of Black civilization, Valerie, where they kind of divided we mentioned a couple weeks ago, those divide and conquer tactics. But you're absolutely right. It is beneficial for those in power that we're at each other's necks, right? But to address Amelia's question, so for me, what I think about, right, and this is not, and this is where like we could complicate Lathan's comment in the sense of, he was the American president, right? So even from the standpoint of him being American president, I'm gonna use this example. Trayvon Martin is murdered, right? And at best, the only thing that he does is make the statement that if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. No other type of intervention, no other, like, this young boy was hunted, right? He was hunted. So the premise was stand your ground law, right? But let's deal with the facts, okay? George Zimmerman made a call to report Trayvon Martin. They told him to stand down, stay in your car, right? So the whole premise of the stand your ground law is that someone is advancing towards you and you have the right in this state to defend yourself, right? But again, he hunted him down because even the authorities told him to stay in your car, right? So at this point, for me, like, let's take race out of it, like from a pure human rights standpoint. Wouldn't you think the president would have the capacity to say, yo, this is an injustice that has been done? Like, let's like, just to give you like a historical context, the Black Lives Matter movement starts under the administration of a Black president. That just kind of points to the absurdity of his capacity as a Black leader in the position of the leader of the country, right? So again, let's not even talk about it from a Black perspective, but let's just talk about it from this perspective of taking care of your citizenship. Had the roles been reversed, right, and Trayvon been a white boy named Trevor, right, and George Zimmerman would have been Gerard, right? Guarantee you that the state and the government and the federal government would have stepped in to make sure that some type of justice was meted out. So you see what I say when I say that things stayed the same. Other thoughts, other comments, other questions, other concerns?
I agree with you. Things stay the same. And I think that's why to me, that's an example of white innocence and what it looks like for the white guy kills somebody and he gets to go to Burger King, right? Versus the Black man he's always seen as a threat, or there's seen as a threat. And so to me, I had a comic book class, and don't come at me, but I learned that DC and Superman and all of that were made by two Jewish men that were coming in here that came into Hollywood. And so to me, I see, okay, well, these are two Jewish boys. They made Superman. They made Superman look like them. So now Superman's the good guy. He's super powerful. Nothing can hurt him. But then what do I make Tyrese look like? Or what do I make whoever? And so I think that in order for us to break that Black cycle of we can't get up, I think that we need to be portrayed as something other than somebody who's down to kill or who's down to ride or whatever.
I agree with you, Lathan. But here's my concern when we is the difference between being attentive to the importance of the type of media that's being put out and the glorification of the individuals who produce the media, right? Because again, like, let's be clear, right? Even Tyler, the creator, he is being paid by someone. His music is being put out by someone, right? So these individuals are also being manipulated by who pays them. Even the biggest boss in the music industry from a Black standpoint, Hove, right?
Yeah.
He says I'm a businessman, right? This is what he tells us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Check it out. Remember Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah.
Why was Colin Kaepernick taking a knee?
Because he was in protest for, I don't recall, somebody died, right? Somebody died.
But somebody's
died. Always
dying. That's
yeah.
the point, though. That's
somebody
the point.
Died. Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for, right? He's protesting the murder of Black folks, right? So he does his protest. The viewership in the NFL plummets, right? So if you know anything about the NFL, they about their motherfucking bag. So what did they do?
He gotta go.
Hove to the rescue.
Oh,
look it up. There's a meeting with Godell, the commissioner of the NFL, Jay-Z, and all of his like Rock Nation CEOs and what have you.
Okay.
In this meeting, which he says, the time for kneeling has passed. We beyond that. So again, why did he start the kneeling? Because Black people were being murdered. To my understanding, Black folks are still being murdered. So what we got in return for us to stop kneeling is some dope ass halftime performances. We got Usher, we got Beyonce, we got the West Coast presentation of hip hop. We got all these things, but Black folks still continue to die. So you see how these people in media, right? I understand the importance of media. I truly do. I'm not diminishing that. But what I'm saying, we have to be careful by propping up these people that produce our media as leaders and spokesmen. They haven't done the work, or they don't have the capacity to understand what is necessary to move us forward. What Black folks need is not a fucking halftime show. We know how to entertain ourselves. We're really good at that. What we could use, though, is stop killing us.
Yeah.
And he
May I
was
say something?
complicit. He was complicit in ensuring that that remained the status quo. Go ahead, Filberto.
I think it's really tough. There's really too much power up there by the white man, or I think it's really difficult to get up on that pedestal and sit, like, be for the Black people. It's like I don't know, like, because if, for example, Barack Obama ended up taking the right path, right, and like being for the Black people, think about how easy, like, he would have, I don't know, been assassinated. Or it's like it's how do you take a step in the right direction when those in power are have just blocked that way completely, you know?
Is it that because it's like, bro, you want to say we need to be in power, we need to become the ones in power, right? But then we got Obama. We got someone who was in a power, and he just wasn't for us. So how do we make sure that when Black people, Black influencers, Black leaders, that they're coming up and they're saying, look, we need help, how do we educate our own people on that, would you say?
I think like Obama being put in power is similar to that idea of like the halftime show. It's like you made it seem like you put someone in power that would be for you, so that, you know, you'd stop the noise, and so that so that the Black people would be like, okay, well, now we got someone in power, but let's chill out. You
So
made it seem, you know, because there's an agenda, right?
yeah, but
And
I'm saying, so for the people that are actually have the power, I'm saying for not the figureheads, do we need more Black people in the CIA, in the FBI?
Well, historically, they've been used to take us down, right? And I think here,
Yeah.
let's reframe the question. And this is what I mean by that. Is the object really to replace those in power? Because what the people in power do to maintain their power is oppress. Or is the object creating a society where power is not needed?
Right.
So
we
that's
educate.
what I say when
So
I'm
we try.
framing the conversation to have us think about it differently, right?
Yeah.
I want to exist in a world where I don't need to impress anyone for me to be good or to feel powerful, right? I want to create a space to where we could just be, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something, Michelle?
I was saying, so can y'all hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. So the answer to the well the solution to the problem would be to educate, right? Try to educate as many as we can, so that way they can understand and recognize the oppression. But the question is, how many people can we get to listen to be open-minded and willing to learn and listen?
Well, think of it this way. if you get one and that one gets one and that one gets one, it's spreading. It's not about it's what Emil Cabral calls creating a critical mass. You don't have to have everyone, but you have to have enough that could be able to move things. This is how I literally look at my work. I may not get the whole 21 people in this class, right? But if I got 5, shit, that's good. Then 5 will go get 2. That 2 will go get 1, and it keeps moving, right? Critical mass is not about having to get everyone. But also, you're right about education. But also one thing about education, it's not always about what you say. It's about how you move through space, what you do, because that makes what you say believable. But good luck with your voting today, because I know that's what you're going to go do. No, I'm just fucking.
No, I gotta hit the class and then I'll vote after class.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with you. All right, y'all. There is no class on Wednesday, but do watch the material for Wednesday. A lot of our conversation as it pertains to Garvey and Woodson is around this idea of self-sufficiency and self-determination. Black folks doing it for themselves, right? And the material that we have for Wednesday is a pristine example, the utmost example of Black folks doing it for themselves. We'll watch a video on Black Wall Street, right, which is one of the most wealthiest towns for Black folks, by Black folks in the early 1900s. They amassed so much wealth that they were in conversations of making economic trade with France, right? And then we'll also watch a documentary on the MOVE movement, a group in South Philly who sought to create some self-sufficiency and kind of break away from the government in a sense and all type of capitalist ties. So please watch those. Do know we do not meet on Wednesday, but we'll pick back up next Monday. Any other last minute questions,